morning, everyone. I hope you are all staying warm today. We're coming to you from the 10th floor of the Northwest Freeway, the Harris County AgriLife Extension Office here in Harris County. Good morning. My name is Shannon Dietz, AgriLife Extension Agent for Agriculture and Natural Resources. Want to welcome you all for our monthly presentation for the Homegrown series. And this month, I'm going to be presenting on basic grafting techniques. So it's going to be a fun one. So welcome to those of you who have joined us before, and welcome to the new people who are joining us for the first time. We're glad to have you to the AgriLife family. So what we're going to do today is we're going to give a basic overview of grafting techniques. We're not going to get too heavy into any particular technique or anything like that, just gonna, because there's so much out there. All right, so if you do a Google search on grafting techniques, there's stuff that are that is informational brochures from AgriLife Extension Service, all your extension services throughout the United States, and then there's also private industry that puts out information about grafting and everything, but they're basically all are the same thing. So we're going to talk to you about some grafting techniques, like I said earlier, and we're going to go through some of the tools that you need to perform basic grafting. Don't be intimidated by grafting. It does, but you do need some patience. It does take some time to get to learn some of this. There are some tools that have been developed over the last couple of years that make this really, really easy for the home consumer. It's not just meant for nursery people anymore. If you're feeling adventurous and want to start grafting on your home or at your home, some patio plants and different things like that, we hope that you'll get some information today to be able to do that. So again, with grafting, if you're looking for a new hobby, this is a great area that you might want to participate in. Again, like I said, there are a lot of resources out there that can walk you through the process and stuff like that. So don't be intimidated. It's also great for professional people who work in the nursery industry. They are hireable by jobs for people who can graft and bud and different things like that. So if you have an interest in that and you want to become more involved in the nursery or the green industry, or anything, this is going to be some great information for you to be able to use and hopefully give you some pointers on what you need to do to expand your knowledge. And then lastly, economical. If you have the time, the patience, like I said, and you have some orchards, say quite a bit of orchards around here. Any type of citrus that you might have an orchard, or you might have 3 or 4 or 5 trees that have been around for a while and they're starting to look really leggy and they're past like 10, 15, 20 years and they're not really producing much good fruit anymore. You might want to consider grafting some new bud stock onto those. And then because if you have good root stock, we're going to talk about that in a little bit. It takes a combination of 2 things. We're going to talk about rootstock and we're going to talk about Scion. So again, like I said, it brings in that economical aspect of it, that you don't have to start from scratch again. You can use some of that produce and that rootstock and that you have already to be able to get the job done. So grafting is basically an asexual propagation. It's not a propagation because there's no cross pollination or anything like that. So it's basically joining 2 or parts of different plants to be joined as one. All right. So and but one tree can actually have 3, 4, up to 5 times different varieties on a tree that you can graft onto it, so that the opportunities are endless. The only thing that you need to pay attention to is that you need to graft within the variety. You can't graft outside the variety. So basically what that means is if you have a pear rootstock and you want to graft a pear Scion onto it, you can do that. Bradford pear, Bartlett pear, anything like that. If the same thing for apples. Apples are really popular for grafting onto, and that's for either grafting and budding. But you cannot graft a cherry Scion onto a apple rootstock. You can't go outside the variety or anything like that. So it's kind of funny because I was talking to a coworker this morning, and I remember some of the seed catalogs that would come out, and they would advertise trees that get 20 different fruits and vegetables off of, anything to buy something from the seed catalogs and everything. Well, those aren't true. With the help of Photoshop, they will put apples and orange and cherries and everything on the same tree, but it does not actually work that way. So keep that in mind. If you have an orchard and you're working to improve the variety of your peaches or plums or anything like that, stay within the variety. You can't cross outside the variety. So a couple common terms that we're going to get familiar with today. If you've never been involved in grafting before, some of them are going to be that you're going to run into very often. And the first one is going to be the Scion. All right. The Scion is basically the plant that is going to be what you're going to be grafting onto your host plant or your rootstock or the tree. All right. So now is the actual time to start collecting Scion wood. And that is late winter, early spring. And so I basically went and collected some pieces of Scion wood. They might be a little bit longer than what is normally required. I like to cut them a little bit longer, and that way you can maybe get 2 cuttings off of it or anything. So basically what you're going to do is you can collect Scion wood at any time. If you're not going to be using, well, anytime during that late winter, early spring. And if you're not going to be using them right away, what you want to do is you take them and you're going to wrap them in a wet paper towel. All right, just lightly damp. And then you're going to put them in your Ziploc bag. You're going to close it up. And then what you want to do is write on your bag, Scion wood, citrus, and you would put the date there. And then so you would put this in your refrigerator in your drawer, and you would keep it at a cooler temperature. But the only thing that you need to pay attention to is that this won't last for more than 2 to 3 days. So make sure whenever you cut your Scion wood that you have your rootstock already readily available that you're going to be putting this onto, because if you keep it around for more than 3 days, even though it's in moist wood, moist towel, and in a cool temperature and so forth like that, the cambium layer and the phloem and everything are going to start to shut down in the Scion. So it's not going to be good anymore at that point. So that's what you, so Scion is one word that you're going to get familiar with. So rootstock is another one. All right. So basically rootstock, and we're going to be playing make-believe on some of our activities and some of our demonstration topics here today. So I have a tree here in this pot, and we're gonna pretend that it is an apple tree. All right, it's actually a magnolia tree, but like I said, for demonstration purposes, we're going to be using other things. So the rootstock is actually, say for example, 1 to 2 inches above the root, the soil line of the host plant. All right, so you can actually grow your own rootstock from seed, or you can actually order rootstock. There are several companies that will that you can purchase rootstock from that are disease and insect free, and they have been tested to be quality rootstock. Rootstock is going to be selected because it has good disease resistance. It has good anchorage ability. It's going to hold into the soil. It has a good root system. So that's another thing. And it's been tested and tried, and it has those qualities that it might not produce a good fruit, but it produces a good root system. So that's where you're going to marry the two of them together. So you might have a really bitter apple, but it's a really good rootstock, and you have a really good sweet apple that you want to graft onto it. So you're going to marry those two, and you're going to become up with a new plant and so forth. So your inner stock is going to be your trunk area, all right? And that's going to be this area right here, obviously from the top of your root stock to where your graft is going to be. And that's going to be your inner stock area. Cultivar is basically another word for variety. We're going to use those interchangeably. Remember, we talked about cultivar and varieties already. You have to stay within the same cultivar to be able to graft or bud anything and be successful with it. Again, you can't go from cherry to peach, for example. And then the last one is the cambium layer. The cambium layer is probably the most important area of the tree that you're going to want to make sure or pay perfect attention to, that there's a perfect marriage or a perfect union joined. The cambium area is actually where the good cells, the new cells that produce the plant flow in this in the trunk area. So if you have a side diagram or overview, and if you're looking down on a trunk, if this is the top part, this is your phloem, and then the outside area is your bark. That inside layer, right on the inside there, is the cambium layer. So the cambium is actually where the water and the nutrients and everything flow up and down from the root system to the top of the plant to be able to go right there. So anytime you're doing any type of grafting, you're going to want to make sure that you pay perfect attention to that cambium area right there. And that is the most important area on a plant. That's going to be when it comes to having a successful graft take root. So just to kind of give you a little biology lesson there for some of you, it might be a little flashback. So moving on, we're going to talk about why grafting. Some trees cannot produce fruit from seeds. Okay, a perfect example is citrus. You can actually grow citrus from seeds, but you're not going to get a true fruit. All right. So say, for example, like you're eating a navel orange or a satsuma or so forth, you can plant those seeds, but you don't know what kind of produce it's going to produce, and you don't know how long it's going to take to get to that produce to even show what you're actually growing. So to kind of get a head start on that, what you would want to do is you would actually get rootstock, and like I said, you would purchase it or get it from a nursery, or you have it already on site if you have an orchard or 3 or 4 trees, and you would graft onto there. If you want to change the variety, again, you can have an apple tree with 3 or 4 different varieties of apples growing on it. That would be cool. How cool would it be if you have grandkids and you came over and you had a red apple, a red delicious, and a Granny Smith, and a Fuji apple all on the same tree? You know, kind of really neat. It's definitely a conversation starter. So that's another thing. Add pollinizer. So some trees or some bushes or any type of plant that we might have in the garden, some of them have male plants, some of them have female plants, and some of them have both. So in order to get, say, for example, if you had a plant that had only female parts, but it needed to be pollinized, all right, you could actually graft a male part onto the tree, and then whenever you would have automatic pollination there, all right? So the pollen from the male part would go into the female part, and it would all be in the same tree, and then you wouldn't have to worry. You would still have bees and everything carrying the pollen, but it would be a lot easier on your part to make sure that fruit is actually going to be set. And then we talk about changing the root system. Certain root stocks have superior growth. We talked about that already. good anchoring ability, disease resistance, and superior growth habits. So again, make sure if you do go with buying rootstock that you go with a reputable nursery. And there are a lot of different rootstocks out there. So make sure that you apply it to the particular zone that you're living in. Here, if you're living along the coast, you're not going to want to get a rootstock that does really well up in the Mid-East or the Northwest or something like that. So you're, even though like there are plenty of different rootstocks out there for citrus, just make sure that you're getting the rootstock that you want. And so this brings up a good point. So it doesn't matter what rootstock you have, if you're going to be grafting onto it is what is actually going to be producing your fruit. So say, for example, you had a rootstock, but it's known for really bitter fruit, and you graft a sweet cherry onto it. You're not going to have to worry about, oh, well, is it going to come out bitter? Or is it going to come out sweet or whatever? It's going to take on whatever you graft onto it. All right. So the rootstock is only providing the nutrients from the soil and so forth to get it up and down that trunk, up and down that cambium layer, to get it out to the leaves and to the apex terminal up on the top and so forth. So keep that in mind. Another thing that you're going to want to pay attention to is that whenever you're grafting on the rootstock, say, for example, you have suckers, all right? And I know some of you have seen these before, and we have these a lot of calls sometimes with the freeze coming up. Everybody's always worried about their citrus trees and stuff. So if a citrus tree gets hit by the freeze and it gets killed, we had a lot of calls in and they're like, oh, my citrus tree's still living. It's got, you know, green coming up and everything. Well, basically what's happening is you have suckers coming up at the base of your tree, and that's coming up below the graft line. All right. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to take those suckers out. And this happens either whether it's going to be a freeze or whatever. The tree can be growing fine, the graft could be growing fine, but as soon as you see a sucker coming out, you're going to want to snip it off, and you're going to want to take it away from the plant, all right? Because that's going to rob the plant, that's robbing the plant of the nutrients that should be going up and down your plant, and it's also going to grow a lot faster than the graft will, all right? So those suckers will actually take over that plant, and you won't, the graft won't be an advantage to you anymore. All right. So with that being said, we talked about a little bit about when is time to graft. So now is the time, late winter, early spring. And but we're going to talk about budding in a little bit too. And we're going to talk about 3 different grafts today. We're going to talk about a whip and tongue graft, we're going to talk about a cleft graft, and then we're going to talk about budding. Now, the difference between budding and grafting, they happen at 2 different times of the year. So this is the time when you would do grafting, but budding would actually happen during the late summer, early fall. All right, so we got 2 different seasons where you can actually be grafting. And actually in citrus crops and apples and not oranges, but apples, plums, peaches, and so forth, you're going to have more budding going on than grafting. What happens with budding is you can actually have more sprouts come out, and it's not as hurtful to the plant, because like when you're doing grafting, you're actually making incisions into the cambium layer, into the bark and everything. And anytime you have any incision into the bark, you're going to be introducing, or you have the opportunity to introduce disease and insects into the bark. We're going to show you some ways how you can help alleviate that, but we want to cut down on put the least amount of stress on the plant as possible. All right. And so budding kind of usually does that. We'll talk about that in a second. So let's talk about our tools for grafting. And again, this is just a wide variety here. You can basically do this with any type of equipment out there. Amazon has a lot of stuff. I really didn't find a lot of local feed or garden stores that had grafting equipment. I had to purchase basically all of mine online. And basically what I have here is I got a good heavy duty set of pruners, hand pruners. This is really good for taking out light branches. It's not meant for anything um, usually past about a 2-inch diameter. But you're going to want to get something quality, something that's heavy duty metal, something that is fits very ergonomically in your hand, and that it's easy to use. All right. So you don't want, I think either myself or somebody who might be, 15, 20 years older than me wouldn't have a problem using these. They're very powerful and they have a little safety lock on the side. And I think these came from Walmart. Probably most of you have these around, but if not, you can expect to spend anywhere from $20 to $25 on those. The next set here is something that's gotten to be real popular over the last couple of years, and I actually ordered this on Amazon. It is a combination grafting instrument and also a pruner. So if you look, it's got the pruning shears built into it here, and I can't really take anything of very wide diameter. You're pretty limited on that, but what the selling point is actually the grafting piece that's here. So this set actually come with 3 different plates. It's got a V plate, and these are interchangeable. You basically take out the screw, and slide out the plate, and you can change the plate on the inside. There's one that looks like an omega sign. There's one that looks like a V, and then there's one that looks like almost like a circle. And they all do the same thing, to be honest with you, but they're very easy to use. This is an example of one that I did before, and it's actually kind of like a puzzle piece. So just to kind of show you, this was a cut that I did before, and say, for example, this was your rootstock and this was your Scion. You would just have to come in here and put the 2 of them together. Back like that, you would wrap it up with paraffin tape, and you'd be good to go. And just to kind of show you how that works, cut that off, come here, make sure it gets lined up, pop it through, and then you got a perfect cut. This is a saddle cut graft, and then you have here, if you would, and all you have to do is just line it up, slide it in, perfect fit. All right. So this is a really great tool if you're going to be serious about grafting, and it works on citrus trees, it works on rose bushes, it works on grapevines and different things. So I purchased this with the combination grafting knife. This is 2 different blades, and this was in a set for about $30. So this is 2 different knives. This is the main knife that you would use for grafting, and this is really sharp. This is the straight edge blade, and then on this end is where you would actually flip open any of the bark to slide in, like a T-bud or anything like that. So it's already built in there. So this is what a grafting knife looks like. All right. And if you don't want to purchase a grafting knife, any type of regular pocket knife will do. I will tell you though, if you're going to be working on any type of hardwood, citrus wood, or anything like that, it talks about that you're supposed to be using a really, really sharp knife. You are going to need some sharpeners, tool sharpeners around, because it will dull knife blades very easily. And so just keep that in mind. One thing you're also going to want to pay attention to is keeping your knives clean and going, especially if you're going from, say, for example, you're working in a citrus orchard, or you have 4 or 5 trees that you're working on grafting. You want to make sure that you don't carry any disease or insect from tree to tree to tree. So you're always going to want to make sure that you give your tools a quick bath. And with that, you can either do, and this would be your pocket knife, this would be your grafting tool, anything that you could use it on. So you could always splash it with rubbing alcohol, isopropyl alcohol, or if you want to use a little bit stronger combination, you could use about a cup of bleach to about 9 cups of water, and give your tools a quick shake in the bath. You don't want to leave them sitting there because you don't really know what it's going to do to the metal. You don't want to have your metal rust or anything like that. So you just want to basically take off any pathogens or bacteria or anything that you might be carrying from knife to tree. Couple of rolls of paraffin tape. I have 3 different rolls here, 3 different sizes. They all do the same thing. They're just in different widths. And these work really well. You can get these off of Amazon as well. Lastly, we have some name tags. Thank you very much. That you would work if you were working on this tree right here. You could come in and say, it's a good example of, you would write the name and the date and what you actually performed on it. And so you would know whenever you're coming back to that tree that we had a T-bud grafted on there on March 15th of 2020. And you would know, you would give it about a month time. And then in that month, you would definitely see some growth happening. If in a month that you don't see any growth happening, you know you're probably not going to have a successful graft or bud take place, because that's usually by the time that cambium layer has that time to be able to start sending that nutrients up and down there. So you might have to start over. So that's a good tell sign to kind of help you keep in place. So with that, so we're going to go ahead and talk about a couple different grafts today. And like I said, this is a basic overview. We're not going to get too in detail with this. And I will tell you that we are giving away a pruning knife. So those of you who fill out the survey and want to be entered into the drawing for a pruning knife, we will be giving that away, compliments of the Harris County A&R committee. So if you're interested in a pruning knife, really nice one, enter the survey, make sure that you put your name and fill out the survey and be honest and let me know how you like the presentation today. So just a little side note on that. I'm gonna go ahead and keep those open because we're gonna be using those in a second. All right, so the first one we're gonna talk about today is the whip and tongue graft. All right, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna show you what actually a whip and tongue graft looks like on the whiteboard here, and then I'm gonna go ahead and demonstrate it. But just for those of you who can't see, because it's gonna be very detailed on there. So a whip and tongue graft is you're basically taking either your root stock and you're going to, so say for example, you have root stock here, all right, and your saw line roots, all right, and so you're going to come up here and then you're going to make a slide cut, all right, but then you're going to come in and make an indentation in it. So it's almost like a little fork in this area right there, all right. And then so your Scion piece is you're going to get a piece of Scion wood, and then I have it, and then you're going to come here, and then it's basically like a puzzle piece. And then this is going to go on top of that one, and so they should fit just like that. And then you're going to take some paraffin tape, and then you're going to wrap them and close it there. This is the whip and tongue graft. This is one of the easiest grafts there are. And it's a pretty easy one to manage. So I have here, so I have 2 pieces of, pretend that this is the root stock, and I've already come in and cut the bottom portion of this for the whip and tongue graft, and then this the Scion part. And it's hard to tell, but there is actually a little groove in there, and that's where it's going to fit on this part. All right, so basically what you're going to want to do is, I need to cut this one a little bit more, and be very, very careful, guys. If you're working with sharp instruments, it's kind of funny because me and my coworker were talking a while ago. You never know when you're going to be a good grafter until you have a couple really good cuts on your hands to be able to produce. And I told him, I was laughing that I should have had a box of Band-Aids or a roll of gauze up here. So basically, I keep losing it. Oh, where did it go? Oh, here it is. All right. So you never want to make sure that you're always going to want to make sure that these are similar in size. All right. You're not going to want to have a larger rootstock and a smaller Scion. You're not going to have a larger Scion for a smaller rootstock. It's not going to make the match happen. All right. So you can see that these are pretty much close to same size, and they would fit just like that as a puzzle. And then I would come in here with my paraffin tape. This is kind of hard sometimes when you're doing it by yourself under the lights. And again, like I said, this is where patience pays off. And this would be a lot different if I had a rootstock that was based, that it wouldn't keep moving around on me. Tape is getting. All right. So you can kind of see the process there. So I apologize, y'all. It's not, sometimes it wants to cooperate and sometimes it doesn't. So again, about a month, you would see that there would be growth happening there. And then you're not going to want to leave this on for a long amount of time, because you're going to have girdling happening. And so girdling is whenever the paraffin tape and everything is wrapped too tight on it, and then it'll form a base on the top and the bottom, and you'll know that the plant is having a hard time sending the nutrients up and down and so forth like that. Now we got it going. And then again, if this was on your rootstock, you would then put your name tag on it, your identification tag, write the date, the time, and so forth, and then you would be good to go on there. So that's a whip and tongue graft. All right. So the next graft that we're going to do is the cleft graft, and that is spelled CLEFT. And then we're going to be using a bigger piece. This is actually a piece of citrus wood here. And so what a cleft graft does is it gives you the option to be able to use two different pieces of Scion to see which one is going to do better. All right. So one of these, the purpose is that one of these is actually going to come out. So you're not going to leave both of these here. So the one that does actually better is the one that you're going to keep. So this piece of citrus wood, I came in, and it's probably a little bit bigger than what we would want to normally do. But you can see that I came in and used this flat tip screwdriver and this hammer, and I came in and made two deep cuts into the trunk of this citrus tree, and just think that this would be on part of a tree and so forth out in your orchard. And you kind of tap that in a couple times. Sorry. and you would take your Scion wood and come in and probably got to go kind of jam it in there, make sure it stays in, all right? And then I'm gonna cut another piece, show y'all how easy it is. All right, and you're basically just gonna want to cut a wedge into it like that, so that way you can come over here and stick it into your cleft graft. So you have two of them. And so we talked about earlier, sorry, keeping it dry and protecting your Scion wood. So what we would do here in this case, because this would be too hard to wrap with paraffin tape and so forth, so we're going to use some wax. And basically this is a wax burner. You can order wax from Amazon and so forth, but why order it whenever you can get it at Walmart or any home store? And you would take your wax and you're going to cover the top of your cuts. You can see that it dries pretty quickly. And this is my smart coworker. We were scrounging for a paint brush this morning, and we couldn't find one, and I forgot to bring one. And she was like, "Would tongue depressor work?" And so, as the county agent here, you know, if you work in extension, you always have to improvise and make do. So, I thought we did a good job with that this morning. So you can kind of see without going on a little bit too far. And again, all my cuts aren't perfect, guys, so I apologize, but you can see how that wax is already covered up there, and it's going to protect that cut from insects and disease, and it's also going to keep that moisture in that trunk. So what's going to happen is you would come on at about a month and a half, a little bit later, and then you would find out which of the Scion woods are doing better than the other one, because you're only going to keep one, and you would just take the other one off. So, so that's basically it for a cleft graft. So that's another popular one. And then the last one we're going to talk about today is budding, and specifically tea budding. Budding, or tea budding. And this is you're going to have your rootstock, all right? And then you're going to make a tea cut in it, all right? So you're going to make a long incision there, and then you're going to come across, and it's basically the same thing what it stands for. It's a tea cut, all right? And so you're actually going to go on your Scion wood, and you're going to get a bud, all right? And this is a side view of it. And so you're going to come here and cut this bud out off that. So what we're going to do here is I have a piece of all right, so that's our bud. You can see, and then we want to cut the leaf off, but it's going to leave that petiole. All right, so that's our bud. It kind of looks like a shield. All right, and you leave the petiole on right there, so that way you can grab onto it. And then, so this isn't the best time for tea budding. So the best time is whenever the cambium layer actually slips. So like I said, with this not being the right time, I've tried to do T-budding on a couple of these pieces here, and the wood on the inside just doesn't slide. So basically, you would come here and make a long incision that way, and then you would come and cut your piece across the top. And in ideal purposes, it might work this time, okay. No, see, that's supposed to come away real easy, but it's not the right time of the year, so it's kind of hard. So this would kind of flap open, but you'll know when it's right because this would peel away very easily. It's very very bad T-cut, but you get the idea. Let me take some of that off. And again, guys, this takes a lot of practice, so just be patient. You're going to want to make sure your petio is pointed up. It's a spider. And so then you can see how it slips in there, and that would be your T-bud. And then what I would do here is just come through paraffin tape. And again, like I said, this is this is probably the most used and most easy to do in home orchards and with rose bushes and so forth. So this one is a lot easier a lot of times, especially if you're dealing with, oh, there it is, sharp instruments and so forth. All right, and there's your T-bud. And so we've introduced a new plant, a new variety into this, and then whenever this starts growing after a month or so, we would come in here, and if this is dissolvable, it would come off, but if not, we would take the tape off and then cut this top piece off because we want this new growth right here to start the growth. We don't want this to be the growth anymore. So we would just come in, and once that's growing, and snip it right off, and there you have your new. Okay. All right, so that gives you an idea of a couple different grafts. Again, just a very high, just rough kind of idea of what all is involved in grafting and so forth. So grafting tips, let's go ahead and wrap this up. I do appreciate everybody who joined in today. We're just going to go ahead and close this up and share a couple grafting tips with you that will be of benefit for you if you want to learn some more information on this, or if you might have some need for just building your own knowledge base and so forth. So Scion wood, you're always going to want to do during the dormant time, which is the dormant time is late winter, early spring. So that's about this time of the year. You're always going to want to go with an insect disease-free tree, and usually about twig size is what you're looking for. And then whenever you when you use the twig, you're going to want to make sure that you take the leaves off because you don't want the energy that that host plant is using. You want it to go into the development of that bond between the cambium layer. You don't want it to go to more leaves and stuff. So you want to make sure that you take those off. Timing, we talked about this already. in the early or late winter, early spring for grafting, late fall or late summer, early fall for budding. All right, and you have to have that cambium layer contact. Remember, that's very, very important. So a couple things that if you have done grafting in the past and you might have had some failure, some of the things that you might have dealt with might have been your Scion and your stock might not have been compatible. Somebody might have told you, you know, try this, and there's nothing wrong with trying different things because you never know what you're going to come out with. So some of the best inventions have been come from mistakes and so forth. So you never know what you're going to get. But in order to be successful at grafting, you're going to want to make sure that it comes from the same variety, the same cultivar. The cambium don't meet properly. All right, we've stressed that enough today. That has to be able to connect so that way that nutrients can flow. There's a callus formed. That's actually whenever there is good bondage there, and so that forms the union graft. All right. So until you see that union graft, and as the tree gets older and older, that graft usually is going to go away. You won't even be able to tell that it was even there at one time. It's done at the wrong time of the year. Wasn't the Scion wood that you might have used wasn't dormant. It wasn't properly covered and it dried out. So you might not have used the wax method, or you might not have used the paraffin tape. And another example of tape, you can actually use either duct tape or electrical tape. If you don't want to purchase any of the paraffin tape, you can use those tapes to use and hold that union together. And then the last one, it might have been attacked by diseases or insects. And sometimes that's why whenever you make a graft, you can't just leave it. You need to make sure that you keep paying attention to it, because if you spent enough time and money and and what have you into the research to make that graft viable, you don't want to just put it out there and then just go check on it in a couple months or something. You're going to want to make sure that you do at least visits every other day. Make sure that the plant is getting enough water, different things like that, because it has had stress included or happened to have on that host plant and so forth. So with that being said, guys, I hope that you have enjoyed the presentation today. I know my coworker, Paul Winsky, has probably shared some resources with you. If not, you can always call us at the the extension office. I would be glad to share those with you. There are a bunch of resources out on the internet. Resources that I use today are Grafting Fruit Trees by Larry Southwick. The MU Guide for Grafting. This came from the University of Missouri Extension Service. Basic Grafting Techniques from Mississippi State Extension, and Grafting and Budding Nursery Crop Plants by North Carolina State Extension. Again, these are all good extension-related brochures. I would encourage you to make sure that you get your information from a reputable source. That's why we always promote those. And then the last one that you can order from Amazon is the Manual of Plant Grafting. And this is a really good one. It's got a lot of good color pictures in it. It goes a lot more in depth into the grafting process and different things. So if you're looking to do this on a much larger scale, I would suggest that you invest in this. I think this was about $25 on Amazon. So with that being said, I really enjoyed your time today. I hope that you came away with some useful information and that this has kind of opened the door to a new hobby area for you. Again, like I said, we really appreciate the opportunity to come into your home each and every month and share this information with you. It's all research-based information, and we're glad to present that to you on behalf of Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service. On behalf of myself, Shannon Dietz, County Ag Agent, Brandy Keller, Miss Lily, and Paul on the back, is a team effort to put this out to you, and we hope you enjoyed it. Thank you all.